What if I don't love God? What if you don't love God? In this video, we're going to address three things. Number one, who cares? What difference does it make whether or not someone loves God? Number two, why is this such a common phenomenon that people don't love God? And specifically, we're talking about people who do believe in God and people who want to love God, but they just don't feel it. And number three, what can be done about it? We're going to change the way we look at the whole picture, so anyone who doesn't love God the way that they wish they did can change that. Welcome to this episode of Bites of Judaism, helping you unlock your best life, know your why, and be everything you were born to be. Please give the like button below this video a quick tap to help it reach more people. Let's get straight into point number one. Who cares? Why does loving God matter? There are two completely separate reasons why loving God makes a difference. The first reason is that love is one of the most beautiful things that life has to offer. There are very few things that are more rewarding and fulfilling and beautiful than experiencing love. So in general, the more love there is in our lives, the better. The more love there is in our lives, the more joy there will be in our lives, the more fulfillment there will be in our lives, the more meaning there will be in our lives. Now, more specifically, if we can experience love with the absolute infinity of the Creator, of God, then the joy and the fulfillment and the meaning become effectively infinite. So experiencing true love for God is profoundly fulfilling and rewarding. That's reason number one why loving God matters. The second reason is that there is a mitzvah, a commandment to love God. V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Now, when it comes to a mitzvah, to the commandments, there are two things going on here. Number one is we have an obligation and a responsibility. And number two, every commandment, every mitzvah is an opportunity to connect. Either of these on its own is enough reason why loving God matters. Whether it's in pursuit of personal meaning and fulfillment, or out of a sense of responsibility and obligation, either way, experiencing and feeling love for God is a good thing. And whether or not we feel love for God absolutely does matter. So that being said, if it is that important and it really does matter, what if I just don't love God? What if you just don't love God? Now, first and foremost, if you don't love God, I don't blame you. If anything, the question should be the reverse. How could anyone love God? And this brings us directly to the second point, why it's so common that people who do believe in God and who want to love God can't necessarily say that they honestly do. There are two parts to this, and they build on each other. Firstly, love is an emotion, a feeling. We can't decide what to feel about someone. We feel what we feel. And this is why there's an expression, to fall in love, right? When you feel love for someone, it's something that happens to you. We don't decide. We can't intentionally just decide in the moment how we want to feel about someone. It doesn't work that way. So it's very reasonable that someone who believes in God and wants to love God might just not feel love for God. Not loving God, not feeling love for God does not mean that we don't believe or that it doesn't matter to us or that we don't want to love. It's just that we don't have conscious control over how we feel. The second part to this is that in truth, there's a lot more to this than just not being in control of whether or not we feel love for God. In addition to the fact that we can't control how we feel, to love God, at least arguably, doesn't actually make any sense. Think of the people you do love. You've interacted with them, you've spent time with them, you've gotten to know them, you've experienced each other's personalities, and when you spend time with someone and you get to know them, you can come to love them. But when it comes to God, we've never seen God, we've never met God, we've never spoken or gone out for coffee with God, we've never hung out with God. We can't perceive God with any of our five senses. We can't see, hear, feel, taste, or smell God. So interactively and what we experience consciously, God is almost just an idea. It's something that we know about, but we've never actually encountered or experienced it. We've never experienced God. So we haven't experientially gotten to know God. How could anyone truly feel love for God in any honest sense? When people don't feel love for God, that actually seems to make more sense than feeling love for God. It makes you wonder about the commandment to love God. How can we be instructed to love God if it's not something we have control over? Right, imagine a teacher walks into a classroom and tells the students in the class that there's a new student joining the class tomorrow, and I'm giving you a heads up and I'm asking you, please like the new student. It doesn't make any sense. It's not something that they can choose or control. And the same thing is true of God. How does it make sense that there's a commandment and you shall love God if it's not something that we have a say in? It's not something that we can choose or control. We've established that loving God does matter. It does make a big difference. So what can you and I do to experience that love for God, considering everything we've just discussed? And especially considering that there's a commandment that says you shall love God, it must be that somehow there is a way that we can voluntarily control or get ourselves to feel love for God. And this brings us to the third point, to completely flip the script. So anyone who wants to feel real love for the Creator more than they already do can take control and make that happen. Let's start by going back to the commandment, and you shall love the Lord your God. How does it make sense to command an emotion? And the answer is, it doesn't. The same way that in that analogy of the teacher, they can't ask the students to like the new student because they don't get to decide what they're going to feel. The question is, are there things that the students can do that are going to lead them to that desired outcome, that are going to lead them to like the new student? And if there are, then it would make sense to ask them to do those actions, because that's something you can request of them. So the question is, what actions are there that could reasonably be requested that could lead to liking someone? The way we feel about someone or something is affected by what we think of them. If we have a positive perception of someone or something, we're going to have positive feelings towards them. If we have a negative perception of someone, we're likely to have negative feelings towards them. The teacher can't request that the students should like the new student, but the teacher can request that they should give themselves a chance to get to know the new student. That's a feasible and reasonable request. So ultimately, what the teacher wants is that they should like the new student, but it's not something you can directly request of someone. It does make sense to request that they should get to know the student, and if you know that this student is very likable, you're asking them to get to know the student, knowing that it's ultimately going to lead to them liking the student. The objective, the desired outcome, is that they should like the new student. And it's very reasonable to request that they should get to know the new student, knowing that that's going to lead to the desired outcome of liking the new student. The same exact thing is true of loving God. It doesn't make sense to command love for God. So let's take a closer look at the commandment. The Hebrew word for "and you shall love" is v'ahavta. Now, if you look at the simplest, most basic literal translation of the word v'ahavta, it's not actually "and you shall love." It's "and you will love." It's not so much an instruction as it is a statement of fact. V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, and you will love God. Now let's look at the context of this statement of fact. V'ahavta means "and you will love God." If it starts with "and," that means it's a continuation from the previous sentence. So let's have a look at the previous verse. The verse before v'ahavta says, Shema Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is one. That is the real instruction. That is an action, not a feeling. The instruction is, hear, O Israel. Become informed about the infinity of the Creator. Learn, hear, connect, integrate. The same way that the teacher can't reasonably instruct the students to like the new student, but can instruct them to give themselves a chance to get to know the new student, the Torah instructs us, Shema Yisroel. Hear, O Israel. Take the time to get to know God, to become familiar with God, to develop an appreciation for God. And then it continues in the next sentence, telling us the natural outcome. Then you will love God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your might. It's true, we can't go out for coffee with God. We can't hang out and chat and get lunch. But with our minds, we can get to know God. We can become informed about the infinity of the Creator. We can hear. We can connect, we can integrate. And then, v'ahavta, we will love God with all our hearts, all our souls, and with all our might. In these two verses, the Torah outlines how every one of us can develop and nurture our own individual, true human love for the Creator, empowering every one of us with a pathway to one of the most beautiful and profoundly rewarding experiences that life has to offer. If you're interested in how you can proactively achieve happiness, even though the pursuit of happiness is inherently self-defeating, click on this video here. You can support production of these videos with a tax-deductible contribution by clicking here.